warm welcome to Bharata First. You're watching the Discourse with me, Rausan Pereira. Ethnic violence has plunged the small state of Manipur into what many have dubbed a state of civil war, as the two largest groups, the majority Meitei and minority Kuki, battle over land and influence. A shocking video emerged last week of an attack in May when two Kuki women were paraded naked by men shortly after their village was razed. At least 150 people have been killed and over 400 wounded in violence that began in early May. More than 60,000 people have been forced from their homes as the army, paramilitary forces, and police struggle to quell the violence. Police armouries have been looted, 200 churches and more than 20 temples ruined, and villages completely gutted. In this edition of the Discourse, we will take a closer look at the violence in Manipur and the possible way forward. Joining me on the program today are SK Sood, former Additional Director General, Border Security Forces of BSF, Gautam Sen, former advisor, Government of Nagaland, and an expert on the Northeast, as well as Suhas Chakma, Director, Rights and Risk Analysis Group. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of the Discourse. Suhas Chakma, let me start the program with you first. Let's first try and understand this whole issue in Manipur, everything that has been going on now for almost 3 months. How would you look back at this? Would you say that it could have all been avoided?
Well, absolutely. I mean, no riots can continue more than, 48 hours or 72 hours without the complicity of the state. If the state wants to bring any situation under control, they can do so. And if the government of Manipur has been successful to arrest some of the perpetrators of those who had paraded the women naked, assaulted them sexually and gang raped them. And obviously it means that you could have taken these actions from the beginning itself. And if they had taken the actions, including against the security forces who had lost about 6 lakhs ammunitions and about 5,000 arms, then of course, the situation could have been brought under control. There is no way in a country of 140 crore people with fourth largest army in the world that you cannot stop the riots. It's simply not acceptable that you cannot stop the riots. You could have stopped the riots if you wanted to, but the state government, for whatever reasons, they not want the riots to be brought under control, and that's why we are here at present.
So would you say that, just a quick follow-up question on that, we were lacking as far as political will is concerned?
Well, political will, there has been absence from the beginning, because the moment you had declared Article 355 of the Constitution on 6th of May, so the center took cognizance of the fact that the situation was spiraling out of control within 48 hours, because the riots mainly started on 4th of May, then 5th of May, riots continued. 6th of May, the central government declared Article 355 of the Constitution. Then from 6th May till 29th May, Home Minister Amit Shah didn't visit. So what were you doing for all these 23 days? So the lack of political will was apparent at that point of time, even when Home Minister Amit Shah visited. And that lack of political will was also quite evident till this video came up. And I still say that the Prime Minister would not have spoken had he had not been informed that Supreme Court is going to take so much actions of this particular case. Because when the Supreme Court assembles at 10:30, obviously the registry of the Supreme Court had already alerted or had informed the Attorney General and the Solicitor General that you have to be present in the court at 10:30, because the Chief Justice is going to make some announcement or take cognizance. So they must have been informed around 9:30. At that point of time, only Prime Minister was to speak about it. And thereafter, there is complete silence. So absence of political will, not only while dealing with the opposition, but absence of political will to deal with own party member is very clear. Because if you are the Home Minister or Prime Minister of this country, what do? The first thing you do is bring the BJP MLS belonging to the Kukis and the Meiteis, and at least have some sort of a dialogue You can show it to the people that it's being worked out. So you are not showing anything visible at this point of time where people could say that, okay, some process is going on. So everything is being done behind back door because of the absence of political will and lack of confidence of the government, because they do not have any confidence whatsoever they are doing. Otherwise, they would have come out.
Right, absolutely. Let me take the points forward and the discussion forward with Mr. S.K. Sood now. Mr. Sood, the role of the security forces, security officials on the ground has been questioned as well all through these 75 days or so. How would you look back at that? Were there any lapses? How can these lapses be, be filled in?
I totally agree that security forces have been found wanting in many respects. In the first place, how can the Manipur police lose almost 4,500 weapons and 6 lakhs of ammunition, as the previous speaker just mentioned? How can they allow their armory, I would call it loot, or I would perhaps it is that the Manipur police personnel themselves surrendered these weapons to the militants who are moving about in the garb of putting on the uniform of police and causing atrocities and violence all over the countryside. Insofar as allegations against Assam Rifles are concerned, I do not think that they are correct, because Assam Rifle is an organization which consists mainly of the troops from all over India. There is a portion, say 30% portion from the northeast, but then that also consists of all the 7 states of northeast. So, and the leadership is always from the Indian Army. So suspecting Assam Rifles to behave in a partial manner, I do not think that is correct. The other blunder that they did was that release of 12 dreaded militants who were caught by the Indian Army. Now, this is a subject matter of inquiry. I'm certain that this cannot be a command decision at the lower level, at the spot, at the ground level. It has to. The orders have to come from the top hierarchy, and top hierarchy also will not make such a blunder unless they have got directions from the political leadership. So the entire thing is very, very suspicious. It doesn't speak well about the political leadership, also the military leadership in this respect. How can they could have adopted, all right, if women had surrounded them, they could have adopted some police techniques. They could have sought the help of police. Granted that police is also not behaving impartially. They also had CRPF there. CRPF could have been requisitioned by the army leadership. And right to private defense is available to everyone. They could have fired there. They could have also fired at lower limbs. They leaving those 12 militants is an inexcusable blunder committed by the army, which has emboldened the militants that they can do anything. So these are certain areas where army and the other security forces need to look inwards and improve their behavior. So there's a lot that the security forces need to introspect about.
Absolutely. I'll come back to you about the Assam Rifles, because there has been another incident, and everyone seems to be putting the blame on the Assam Rifles for the people who have come in from Myanmar. I'll come back to you with a thought on that, Mr. Sood. But Mr. Sen, coming to you now, what has been different this time around? Because, these fault lines have existed for decades now. It's not something that is new. Why has it flared to such a proportion?
My view is I broadly agree with what Mr. Chakma and Mr. Sood said. No, basically, it's a political which has led to this present situation. There's no question of administrative failure or operational failure on the part of the security forces. And what Mr. Chakma has adequately elaborated on what could have been done in the first 48 hours and also. So now it's a question, I mean, there's no escaping from the fact that basically the political directives were not clear or not given clearly, which has led to the snowballing of the present situation. And the situation has been allowed to snowball for more than a month, nearly 1.5 months or so, which is very, very ominous. It has never happened. Northeast, I was FA Northeastern Council and Assam Rifles, and earlier also I've been keeping my gaze on the Northeast. We have never had a situation like this earlier. So now there has to be a not only political will, a decision. I mean, of course, it's political will also, which was lacking, which was primarily lacking. And you cannot blame any administrative failure. And Mr. Sood has mentioned the various steps could have been taken to stop the militants who were captured from being released. There were various alternatives, but none of them were explored. And so, you know, the three court Dimapur and the state government police leadership and political leadership all have failed. It is, they've reinforced their failures. That is what I would say.
Right. Absolutely. All right. Bringing in another aspect, Suhas Chakma, I'd like to take this up with you. There are certain sections of society who have been recalling for AFSPA to be reintroduced in Manipur and say that, probably if the AFSPA comes back into the fore, then you're going to see the armed forces take control of the situation and everything is going to go back to normal. Is that an option?
No, I do not think people are calling for AFSPA per se. What people are calling for is imposition of the president's rule, simply because the political leadership are divided in such a manner between the Kukis and the Meiteis that they cannot sit across each other. And with the entire administration, is divided. So there is no doctor, there is no journalist, there is no engineer. You only have Meitei or a Kuki. So the identity of human beings, that we are human beings first, then thereafter our ethnicity, religion, whatever comes up, it no longer exists in Manipur. And the ethnic cleansing has taken place to such an extent that there are no Meiteis in the hills, in the Kuki inhabited areas. There are hardly any Kuki in the Meitei inhabited areas. So in that kind of a situation, because the chief minister has failed to bring the situation under control, and over a period of time, chief minister is seen as somebody who is partisan, belongs to a particular community. So people are calling for his removal and bringing the situation under control with the president's rule. And it is not only the people. See, Home Minister Amit Shah, when he went to visit Manipur, when he established the peace committee was headed by the governor of the state. Because Home Minister himself knew that chief minister cannot bring the people from the other side. So I would say at this point of time, I think the central government should have, brought the situation under control. I would say that the moment president's rule is imposed, it will evoke some amount of confidence. If you replace the current chief minister Biren Singh with another Kuki, that will not resolve. If you replace him with another Meitei, that will not resolve. Because the ethnic conflict has become so intense, you need a neutral person, and that neutral person is actually the central government. And that's why I agree with Mr. Sood. The Assam Rifles are neutral in that area. And usually what I have seen is that, when the central forces are deployed in the Northeast or in most areas, they tend to act in a neutral manner. And this neutrality of the central forces at times and often is actually questioned by the majority and the dominant groups. So Manipur's case is not different, but I think people who are not necessarily seeking the imposition of the AFSPA, I think even today they seek central rule because Article 355 has failed. So what next? Only Article 356. So that's, I think, the natural solution which they have been seeking.
Okay. I'll come back to you, Mr. Sen, for a reaction on that, whether this is a classical case for president's rule or not. But before that, Mr. Sood, Assam Rifles now, 700 illegal immigrants have entered in from Myanmar yet again. This is a cause of concern as well. We've seen in the past as well that this has been worrisome. So all eyes now, or all fingers are being pointed at the Assam Rifles. How would you look at that?
You see, the point is that the border with Myanmar in that area is very difficult, and Assam Rifles has a way of functioning. It has dual responsibilities in those areas. It is also managing internal security, and it is also responsible to guard the entire 1700, almost 1700 kilometers of international border with Myanmar, with only about 48 battalions. So number one, Assam Rifle does not have adequate strength to man the border, or as sometimes we colloquially use, to seal the borders. Number one. Number two, the border is not amenable to constant 24-hour surveillance everywhere because of the undulating ground and thick foliage, thick forested, and the area being thickly forested. Third thing is the free movement regime in that area. You see, I am actually a little skeptical about the timing of this news about infiltration of 700 odd illegal entrants in one day. See, it is 16 kilometers of free movement regime. The local tribals can go and come back. What's suddenly you find those. If you go to those areas, that way you will find several Burmese national staying for the night in our area. I don't know. I mean, 748 is suddenly ek din mein ho gaya, they say that in one day, or they may have been keeping them together for several days, and today they have disclosed it. So while infiltration is possible, I'm a little skeptical about the information being released today. Now, another issue about AFSPA question that you asked previously. See, the locals may not want AFSPA, but in my opinion, if AFSPA is declared, the hands of security forces will be strengthened. They will then be able to deal with militants organization with a firm hand, although recommendation also is that they, besides using the firm hand, they should use the kind hand. See, present situation is that anyone and everyone in sort of fatigue similar to a military fatigue is moving around with weapons looted from the Manipur armory, Manipur police armory, and opening fire everywhere. Even AK-47s and mortars have gone out. So if AFSPA is implemented, it will help the security forces operate better. And the kind of situation that forced them to release 12 people will be dealt in probably in a very different manner. So that is one. And the president rule question is a very valid point. See, when a large number of people in the state have lost faith in a person, how can he continue to govern the state with so much of violence and continuing violence? Unless, as Mr. Chakma had said, unless the state wants it, the violence cannot go beyond 24 hours, 48 hours. So while president rule is a very serious option that should be considered by the government, bringing in AFSPA, and AFSPA is removed from 19 police stations, which are mostly in the valley, which are mostly Meitei dominated areas. So linkages can be found that forces, the state probably, or the authorities probably do not want forces to operate freely in Meitei dominated area. So the tribals, the Kukis are naturally they suspect the motives of the government. So that is my view about the points that you just raised.
Absolutely.
And then 355. I do not know what is the status of 350, whether it has been officially declared. I don't think I have seen any notification to this effect. I have heard the news, and I know that a gentleman, the previous DG CRP, has been appointed as advisor in the state. and the police chief has been removed and another police chief has been. But what is the actual status of 355? One doesn't know. If 355 is actually implemented, then law and order comes under the central government. What are they doing then? So
Absolutely.
those questions, those are very, very hazy areas which need to be considered seriously.
Absolutely. Very rightly put. And I think those are issues that need serious attention and serious deliberation as well. Mr. Sen, coming back to you now, your thoughts? Are you in agreement with regards to President's rule being imposed in Manipur? That is one. And your thoughts on AFSPA as well?
I am 1000% in agreement that President's rule is required. President's rule should have come long back. ASPA can follow, but ASPA is required. One point Mr. Sanjeev Sood made is very valid, that in the valley districts, police station areas, the ASPA has been withdrawn. Now that itself is not conducive to the, the posture and the security thought of the cookies. Now ASPA is required, but first and foremost, the President's rule should have been promulgated. And with that requires political will and administrative will. That is a must. That has been missing. So that is what has led to the snowballing of the present situation. And this situation, and one more point, you have seen yesterday, there was a huge upsurge in Mizoram. Now you see, these are all ominous portents. You see, you cannot solve the problem just looking at Imphal Valley. You have to see the overall tapestry of the political situation. It is going to have repercussions in Myanmar, in Mizoram, and also in certain parts of, maybe in Assam also, which are where we have the Manipuri people staying, particularly the Meiteis. So these steps are required very much. Without these action on these fronts, but it has to be a coordinated, all-encompassing action, which is required. Other than that, you cannot expect a turnaround in the situation.
Talking about a turnaround, it's time to get quick closing comments now from all my panelists with the best way forward and what kind of long-lasting peace, if at all, we can see in Manipur and what needs to be done for that. Starting first with you, Suhas Chakma.
I think, the first steps which are needed to be taken at this stage is to improve the security situation and facilitate the rehabilitation and resettlement of about 70,000 people who are displaced. And out of 70,000 people, about 15,000 people are displaced or fled to Mizoram itself. So I do not understand why the Union of India cannot facilitate funding discussions so that people could return to their homes. And without rehabilitation and resettlement properly, the camps, which are basically these schools, the camps of the displaced people, they become the center for radicalization, fomenting violence and etc. Because people feel frustrated because they have lost everything. So there is no policy of the government of India at this point of time how to rehabilitate and resettle these people. And nobody has done even an assessment how much damage has been caused, loss has been caused. The second issue, I would say, I think the most important issue is, center can facilitate security provisions where Meiteis could return to their original homes, and the Kukis also could return to their original homes in their respective areas. You have to provide adequate security. Unless you can provide those kind of security, we will have what we have today. There are no Meiteis in the hills, no Kukis in the valley. And how are you going to run the administration at the end of the day? Because the Kukis have an overwhelming number of people serving in the administration, and they have done very well academically. So the Kukis have gone back to the Kuki areas, and Meiteis have come back to the Kuki areas. So much so that I do not think even the Meitei police officers can serve in the hills. If they serve in the hills, they might be subject to specific targets. So in that kind of a situation, how do you restore unless you take concrete measures? And as I said, not a single open concrete measure is being taken by the government of India. And at this stage, what they are doing is you have the director of the Intelligence Bureau and the senior officials of the MHA under the, chairmanship or the control of the Home Minister, talking to the Kuki group with the help of Himanta Biswa Sharma. And on the other hand, you have the BJP leadership and the RSS talking to the Meitei leadership. But if you look at today, they have not been successful even to bring the Kuki and the Meitei militia belonging to BJP, forget about other party, to come and sit across in one table. So if you are not able to bring that, how are you going to facilitate that? So the first step has to be that. And if they want to be more innovative, because both communities are in a way influenced heavily by the civil society groups, I would take the Meitei and the Kuki civil society groups outside the state, either in Guwahati or Delhi somewhere, facilitate some kind of a discussion. And that was what is happening with the Nagas. The Naga Ho leaders used to be taken to Bangkok, for talks with the NSCN, so that NSCN realizes the ground realities. So none of these approaches, either engaging the civil society, political leadership, or the administration, nothing is being done. So there is, only defense of the government of India is no violence had taken place in the last 10 days, 15 days. So everything has come to normal. It is the normal. One small incident can restart the entire process once again. And the moment these bunkers go away, which they have built, the clashes will start.
Right. Mr. Sood.
I would recommend two-step, actions to be taken in two-step. One, in the short term, as has been suggested earlier also, imposition of president's rule is a must. A person who has lost legitimacy in the eyes of people must be removed. Number one. Number two, peace has to be restored somehow or the other. And for that, security forces' hands have to be strengthened, which can be done, as I said, by reintroducing Disturbed Area Act and AFPA, etc. Security has to be provided to people who have been displaced when they return back to their houses. And so these are the short-term measures that one can take. In the long run, I think the point of land reforms needs to be considered properly, needs to be considered deeply. And secondly, the issue of drugs, the opium cultivation in the hills, if it is happening, if it is happening, I have myself seized a lot of ganja, etc. when I was deployed there. So it is happening there. So drugs have to be controlled, and for that, the alternative means of employment or alternative crops have to be introduced in that area. Some alternative that I can think of is, I don't know whether they'll suit that climate and slopes or not, are oranges, maybe orange plantation, maybe rubber plantation, maybe dairy farming, etc. has to be done. And third is that the grievance of cookies is that their area, 89% or something of the hill areas has seen very little development. I was there at Chudachandpur on 2 occasions for almost two years, that is 4 years. I found that the SDPOs and SDOs of remote areas they never went to those areas. They were operating from the district headquarters at Chudachandpur. So if you don't show the face of administration to people living in remote areas, how will you, sort of motivate them to integrate with the mainstream? They will not. They will. They will then try to be self-sustained. So in the long run, administration has to reach the remotest area. The land reforms must be done. This will resolve the issue of cookies as well as Meiteis. And thirdly, as I said, infrastructure, employment, social, human development index has to be improved in those areas. And insofar as the question of reservation is concerned, we need not look far away. Nagaland has 16 Naga tribes. all of them are eligible for reservation in the center. But at the state level, they have sort of restricted the reservations only to 8 Naga tribes, which are considered backward. So the reservation point, the government can think of a solution on the lines of what is happening in Nagaland. So this is what I consider. If we don't do this, we are heading towards a lot of trouble. So, Northeast has been controlled with a lot of difficulty. Mizoram has been won over. The Arunachal is quiet. Meghalaya is quiet. Tripura is fairly okay. And now with this coming, we already have seen yesterday in Mizoram, Meiteis have been asked to leave. And I also heard, I don't know whether that is true or not, Assam has said Mizos to go back to their area. So if this thing happens, we are heading back towards the old days where secessionist movements started, and then we'll be spending a lot of finances and sacrificing a lot of lives in controlling those areas. Government must act like statesmen and must look into their problems with a lot of consideration.
Absolutely.
Whataboutery is not the solution.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very well said, Mr. Sood. I think these are some very valid solutions, and I hope we move in that direction. Mr. Sen, please close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
My co-panelists have already said, they have touched on every gamut of requirement, I'll say, which is required to be attempted. And of course, rehabilitation is one of the foremost measures which have to be taken in sync with the imposition of president's rule. But I wonder whether that sort of, political inclination is evident now. How the things will be attempted, I'm doubtful. But rehabilitation is a must. A lot of difficulties have come up with the Kukis and also on the Meiteis. So now this has to be seen, but I'm worried that the repercussions of what has happened is going to be there on the adjoining states also.
Absolutely. All right. Let's hope that that does not happen and we don't see a spiral effect as far as the neighboring states of Manipur are concerned. I hope that the situation is settled sooner rather than later. All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. Much appreciated. So what's coming out of this discussion is that in the short run, all measures should be taken to ensure that peace prevails in the state of Manipur. Security of the citizens is of utmost importance, and there is nothing beyond that. As far as the violence over almost the last 3 months is concerned, it should have never happened. If the authorities really wanted to rein in the violence, then it could have been done in less than 48 hours. Unfortunately, political will was lacking. Some long-term measures to bring peace to the state are land reforms at the earliest, infrastructure development, especially in the hilly regions, a move away from cultivation of drugs and suitably compensated, by those who have been affected with proper employment and any other alternate means. Some kind of a solution needs to be reached at the earliest so that the violence does not spill over to the other neighboring states. That would be catastrophic, as we have worked really hard to bring peace to the region. Now that's it on this edition of The Discourse. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, and do share the content as well. And please come back for more. Until next time, this is Rausan Pereira signing off.